Nifty and sensex end the March series on a healthy note. The Nifty reclaims 23,500. The market snaps a 5-series losing streak to record its biggest gain in a series since September last year.
Donald Trump announces 25% tariff on all cars shipped to the United States with effect from 2nd April. Reports suggest that the levy will be imposed on car parts as well. Tata Motors is a key loser on fears of tariffs denting JLR sales. Other auto stocks also fall.
Wipro clocks gains of over 1% and is the top Nifty winner. This after it bags a hefty $650 million 10-year digital transformation deal from Phoenix Group in the UK. Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of Markets Forward, your go-to show where we get you all the key data points from the day gone by. And of course, then we gear you up for next day's trade as well. I'm Surabhi Upadhyay. With me is Vinny Motiwala. And Vinny, what a good show, a good feeling, right? As we read out the headlines after many months, it's been a good series in March. We had yesterday, of course, there was a wobble, but again today we had green on the screen and India outperforming a lot of the markets around the world.
Absolutely, Surabhi. You know, when you started the day, you saw that red in the Asian markets as well, US markets. So you were a bit worried, is what I thought at least, that maybe would we be in the red again. But an interesting day coming in for the Nifty 50 as well. Only sector that didn't do well today, couple of names. One is auto, obviously, because of the tariff announcement that came in from Donald Trump. And other than that, pharma. You know, the worry comes in that, you know, will we see some tariffs coming in on these pharma names also is something that is a bit of a fear. But PSU banks, they did quite well in trade. So look at a Bank of Baroda, Canara Bank, all of them managing to hold on to very strong gains. And so that outperformance came in from the broader end of the market. That Nifty small cap side did quite well. A lot of names on the small cap front, Aegis Logistics, we had Credit Access, Action Construction, Aadhar Housing Finance. There was a brokerage note that came in on this front as well from DAM Capital initiating coverage. So that is also keeping the stock a buzz. And all of them are seeing strong gains, closing with gains of more than 5% as well.
No, absolutely. And the mid-cap index, there was this last little bit of adjustment in, volatility right towards the end. But for what it's worth, the mid-cap index also did really well. Managed to close very firmly in positive territory there. That's what I'm talking about. Just last sort of, few seconds of selling coming through. Otherwise, we were practically at the highest point of the day. And the advance decline ratio was fairly even, Steven, steady. One stock advancing, one declining. And you'll take that with both hands on a day like today when the tariff news from the US was so negative. So let's tell you what we've lined up for you over the next 20-odd minutes or so. We'll, of course, dive a little deeper into today's market action. All the movers and shakers of the day coming up with Vivek in just a bit. Now, auto stocks, including, of course, Tata Motors as well as Samvardhana, Motherson, they were in sharp focus, and many of these companies face a potential business setback following that 25% tariff order on auto imports into the US. That's in focus. Wipro, as we told you in the headline, good news coming in. They have won a significant order from the UK, so we'll tell you more about it as we go forward. But of course, we wind it down then with some of the key market events to watch out in tomorrow's trading sessions as well. So it's a packed 20 minutes. Let's get started. Over to Vivek with the stock-by-stock account.
Well, good afternoon. Absolutely right. The first thing that you need to keep an eye out for, and you need to remember that in today's trading session, quite a lot of passive ETF flows too came in. This on the account of the fact that you actually saw, the NSE index rejig taking place in the session, especially in the last hour. You saw the flows coming in both in Zomato as well as Geofin. On the other hand, outflows from some of the other names that are exiting the Nifty, like BPCL and Britannia. But the list of individual stocks is what we need to keep an eye out on. Like you mentioned at the start of the show, the PSU banking index was the one that did very well in the session. Have a look at Bank of Baroda, Citi initiating a 90-day positive catalyst watch. That stock high by almost 5%, and the rest of the PSU banks too followed suit. The other set of stocks that did quite well was JK Cement. The entire cement pack, in fact, did quite well. Within that, JK Cement stood out. Jeffrey's note today morning, after meeting the management, indicating that they're about to exit FY25 on a very strong note. That gave a fillip to the entire cement pack. Dilip Bilkon, another stock in focus, quite a large order win coming in from BSNL BharatNet Phase, over 2,600 crore order win. That stock higher by 5%. And RHI Magnesita, not a stock we discuss too often, but that particular stock today, one of the top gainer as far as the NSE 500 index was concerned. And lastly, have a look at Glenmark. Especially in the last hour of the trading session, this particular stock saw quite a sharp spike up, over 3.5% higher on a day when some of the other pharma stocks were actually laggards. On the other hand, long list of losers can't go beyond the entire auto ancillary pack. Quite a few stocks saw significant negative reaction. Tata Motors top amongst them. KP Global, another stock, remember this particular stock at one point of time lost almost 30% on an intraday basis on very, very strong volumes, ending lower by 15% at one point of time, was actually the top gainer on the NSE 500. Sundaram Finance, another stock, surprisingly one of the top laggards on the NSE 500 index, was 6% lower. And AU Small Finance Pack gave up most of the gains that it made the last few trading session. Again, a negative catalyst was by Citi, and that particular stock lower by over 3% today.
Okay, Vivek, thank you so much for that. Important stocks that, surely saw a lot of move in today's trading session. But let's go across to our guests now. We have market expert Anand Tandon as well as Ruchit, Jain of Motilal Oswal Financial Services here to answer some of our, doubts on the markets and talk to us about the markets. Ruchit, right now what you're looking at in terms of the Nifty, today it closed 23,591. So just below the 23,600 levels. What are we watching out for in terms of levels for the Nifty, as well as the Bank Nifty, if you could talk about that as well?
Yeah, very good afternoon, Vidhi. Very good afternoon to everyone. Well, if we see last 2 or 3 trading sessions, we have seen some consolidation in the index. But overall, that high top, high bottom structure, I think on the lower time frame chart still continues. And 23,400 was a very important support level today, which was not breached. So the overall trend still remains on the positive side, and the sectors which have taken the leadership, such as banking is there, NBFC space is there. We have seen some of the other names from such as defense, which has been doing good. So I think overall market breadth is still looking quite positive. So I think since the leadership continues from the heavyweights, we should see a continuation of the movement and of the momentum. And 23,400, 23,300 would continue to act as a very strong support on any kind of minor declines. Now, as far as Bank Nifty is concerned, clearly, it has been one of the outperforming sector in this leg of up move since last 15 days, and still there are no signs of trend reversal happening yet. So I think this momentum should continue towards 52,500 to 52,600 mark, where the previous swing high resistances are there. So we are advising to our clients also to continue to trade with a positive bias as far as short-term trading is concerned until any important supports are breached.
Okay, all right, got that. Gentlemen, let's now kick it off with analyzing what happened with auto stocks today. Many of them were down quite a bit, and this was after US President Donald Trump hit out the sector with the 25% tariffs on auto imports that are coming into the US. Now, Tata Motors, Samvardhana, Motherson, these are some of the stocks that were taking it on the chin. Tata Motors was down throughout the session. From the morning, from the word go, it was down over 5% or so. We have Sudarshan joining in to talk about what these, tariffs, the new US tariffs, what they could mean for these companies. Sudarshan.
So it was a weak day for the auto sector, with sectoral index falling almost 1%. Now, this came on the back of announcement made by US President Donald Trump, who announced that he would impose tariffs of 25% on all the cars that are not made in the US. And also reports suggest that tariffs will be imposed on auto parts as well. And these tariffs would be effective April 2. Now, coming to the companies that will be impacted from this, first one is Tata Motors. US is one of the important markets for JLR, which forms nearly 30% to its total volumes. But the important part is JLR does not have the production facility in the US, and most of the cars that the company sells in the US market are imported by other countries. Now, JLR forms nearly 70% to Tata Motors' consolidated revenue. And the impact due to this tariff will be of more than 20%. So that's the reason Tata Motors was down more than 5%. Now, next up is Samvardhana Motherson. This company will not be directly impacted by tariffs, but there would be indirect impact because Samvardhana Motherson supplies auto parts to those automakers which export cars to US market, and here the impact is seen in the range of 6 to 7%. Now, coming to the stocks that can be impacted because of the tariffs on auto parts, and in that list, 2 names that come up are, first one is Balkrishna Industries and second is Sona BLW. For Sona BLW, more than 40% revenue comes from the US, and for Balkrishna Industries, it's almost 20%. And last in the set is, if US government decides to impose tariffs on bikes and trucks, in that case, the first company that will be impacted is Eicher, because Eicher's Royal Enfield, 2 to 3% of its volumes come from the US market. Second in that list is Bharat Forge, for which North America contributes 40% or a bit more than that to its total standalone revenue. And for Ramkrishna Forgings, nearly 30% of the revenue comes from North American market. So these are some of the major auto companies that can be impacted by US auto tariff.
Right, Sudarshan, thank you so much for that, on giving us a roundup in terms of who maybe could be seeing that impact. Coming in today, we've seen that fall for Tata Motors as well as Samvardhana. Anand, taking this to you, other than Tata Motors, let's talk about these auto anch names, right? Whether you look at something like Balkrishna, Sona BLW, anything on that front that, you would look at right now, or maybe you would be avoiding this pack as a whole?
First of all, the tariffs are not likely to have the kind of impact that the direct top-line numbers suggest, simply because if the tariffs are across the board, you still need to buy those parts. And if everybody anybody who's supplying to the US is probably one of the lowest cost of quality parameters or highest quality parameter, they are the ones that are meeting that criteria. So if the OEMs are buying it from them, they are not likely to be able to change, because the impact of the tariffs will be on everybody. So you may have to give up some of the margins more, but you're not likely to change, to chase away business. What is more likely to happen is that the cost for these cars and vehicles in the US will actually go up to the final consumer, and that may impact overall demand. So it is actually the impact will be transferred to the consumer in the US over a period of time, and therefore they are the ones that need to be worried about. Our outflow will come from the point that you may actually have a lower volume sale happening from that point of view. So for now, I think the better thing is to just wait a little bit. It's not that these stocks are particularly cheap. If they do give you a chance to re-enter at a lower price, that would be the time to look at it, because as I said, the outcome finally is likely to be a lot less than the top line numbers suggest.
Absolutely. Outcome may be a lot less than the top line number suggests, and if there's a fall, you can look at buying these stocks. But let's move on to the next stock for today. We had Wipro that was soaring in trade. 1% and is what it was seeing an uptick of among the top nifty gainers coming in. And this is after the company had bagged a $650 million deal with UK insurance company. Let's go across to Rima, who's here to give us details on this one. Rima.
Thanks so much for that. So indeed, Wipro's won a mega deal, £500 million, which is about $650 million US spread over 10 years. So incrementally, it could add close to about 0.5, 0.6% to Wipro's top line. And remember, the company that they won the order from, UK's Phoenix Group, already has a long-standing relationship with TCS. Actually, that's what makes Kotak very bullish. So they're saying this deal is notable because it marks Wipro's entry into an account which has been a strong hold for TCS. Also, this is the second mega deal that Wipro has won in the last 4 quarters. According to Kotak Institutional Equities, the deal will ramp up from December of 2025 quarter, that's Q3 FY26, and fully ramp up by the end of FY26. Initial profitability of the deal will be low, as is the case typically with mega deals. But according to Kotak Institutional Equity, Wipro will be able to make up for the margins and hold on to margins of about 17.5% through the duration of the entire deal. That said, even though Kotak is enthused by this mega deal win by Wipro, they still have a sell rating on the stock with a target price of 265. They're cautious because, a turnaround requires many things to go right at the same time. It is challenging, and while Wipro's growth, underperformance versus peers will continue to narrow, it will still underperform its peers. Morgan Stanley too, acknowledges that this deal should support expectations of a pickup in revenue growth for Wipro in FY26, especially in a volatile macro environment. They too have an underweight call on the stock, and their target price too is 265.
Okay, all right. That explains the move on Wipro today, Rima. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on and focus on one more name. Aadhar Housing Finance was up 4% today after brokerage firm DAM Capital bet quite big on the stock. Vinny, you went through that note. So what is DAM Capital saying?
Absolutely. An interesting note coming in, right? When you hear those concerns coming out on that MFI front or, on the housing loan front issues. Now, what Aadhar Housing has been doing is that, they're shifting their mix in terms of loan from a non-housing side to the housing portfolio, which DAM Capital is saying is a positive coming in for them. Other than that, the geography-wise in terms of granularity versus peers, it is much better than the peers. The second point is the holistic mix in terms of sourcing channels. That are the two key important areas that are working out well for Aadhar Housing. They expect that growth, to continue for Aadhar Housing, 20 to 22%. That is something they expect will go ahead for the company. Other than that, return on assets, return on equity is much better than peers. The stock is trading at 2 times FY27 book and almost 13 times FY27 earnings. And what DAM Capital is expecting is that the return on equities expected to be somewhere around 16 to 17% over the next couple of years, and could even maybe see a peak of 18% as well, is what they are highlighting. So that's why initiating buy on this one, target price of 525, and the stock closed at the day as a higher point as well. It should be.
Okay, all right. That was Aadhar Housing in focus today. Well, just a quick word, Anand, going back, not just Aadhar, I don't know if you look at this particular stock or not, but overall financials are getting very well bid now. The big boys like Bajaj Finance themselves. What's your thought in specific on housing financiers like maybe an Aadhar, and otherwise what would you pick from the NBFC space?
So I would still prefer banks to NBFCs. I think by and large the argument for looking at banks is far stronger. The valuations are cheaper than many of the NBFCs. If you look at some of the leading public sector banks, for example, they are trading at minuscule valuations compared to what the NBFCs are trading at. If you actually expect it to become a little more competitive in terms of being able to source liabilities, then obviously you will again have those the banks benefiting. So net banks, and after that insurance companies is the way I would look at playing the financials. But from a housing perspective, clearly housing finance is one of the more secure forms of lending. Here again, the question is, the larger companies are likely to benefit because they'll have cheaper funds and therefore their NIM is likely to be higher. The quality of loan portfolio for the smaller companies is going to be a little more challenging. That doesn't mean they cannot make money, because this is still an area where there is a fairly large market and still growing fairly strongly. So I don't specifically want to talk about Aadhar or any particular company, but if you're looking at housing finance, be prepared for a slightly lower NIM and at the same time a little more robust portfolio is the expectation.
Okay, got that. Ruchit, the same question to you as well. Financials are definitely finding momentum in the market again. What would your top bet be?
Well, certainly the Nifty Financial Services Index is around its all-time high. And it was the first index to form a high top, high bottom structure when the markets were bottoming out. So I think that relative outperformance could continue, and we can clearly see some of the stocks that have taken the leadership includes Bajaj Twins, the Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Finserv. Stocks such as Shriram Finance has also witnessed very good price volume action. So I think these names should see a continuation of the momentum, and the relative outperformance over medium term can be seen from these NBFC stocks.
Sure, Ruchit, thank you so much for your view coming in on the NBFC side as well. But thank you so much, Anand and Ruchit, for joining in with us on Markets Forward. But we are going to step into a very short break now, and we will leave you with CLSA's Lawrence Blanco, who believes that the market has bottomed out and expects the Nifty to reach 26,000. However, Goldman Sachs Sunil Kaul advises caution due to tariff uncertainties and the domestic slowdown. Take a look.
I think the worst is over. There were two things we were looking at. One is, in the third, fourth quarter of last year, we had this topping pattern that suggested you trade down towards a 21,800 to 22,800 zone. And that was basically the trading range that you had prior to the India elections in June of last year. We fell into that range. And the big thing that we saw last week that really sort of improved the technical landscape was, one, we broke above the 50-day. And what was different about last week's break above the 50-day versus December's break above the 50-day is that we had this breadth thrust signal. And now what that measures is the number of stocks within the Nifty making new 4-week highs. And typically when that gets above 55%, we have a really good hit rate. Looking at it on a 90 or 250-day basis, that the Nifty is up over 13%. So, that would suggest that we revisit the highs. We trade back over 26,000.
I think if you just looked at the rate purely on the basis of product by product weighted average reciprocal tariffs, which is that if US matches sort of India's tariffs on each of the products, that effectively is about 11 percentage points of higher tariffs on India. But then I think we also have to keep in mind that the number could be a bit higher because of non-tariff measures like subsidies and import bans, and there are also kind of VAT And so there is a lot of uncertainty whether the US does include VAT, does not include VAT. Europe is obviously a large risk there as well. So depending on what the number could be, it could be north of sort of pure 11 percentage points, which is based on the weighted average tariff rates.
Welcome back. Here with us on Markets Forward. Let's quickly get you some of the corporate highlights that we picked up from the course of the day. First up, GAIL's management has said that the PNGRB proposals to amend natural gas tariffs are positive for pipeline operators, particularly if they go through, as they would benefit companies with isolated pipelines. The management highlighted that their proposal for a 35% tariff increase is currently under active consideration by the PNGRB. The firm also added that it is any delays in the tariff announcements is usually compensated.
Next up, commercial vehicle maker Ashok Leyland Shenu Agarwal said that company's EV subsidiary, which UK has been incurring losses of around 2 to 3 million euros per month for several years and has now initiated a consultation process to close it. However, he added that FY26 outlook is looking more promising for the Switch India, and which is expected to turn positive in terms of the profit after tax.
Last but not least, Suzlon Energy's management says that the wind energy industry is on track to achieve its target of 8 gigawatts of annual installation by FY27. Suzlon, as a dominant player in the sector, holds a significant 31% market share in installed wind capacity. The management adds that as of the third quarter of the current fiscal, the company's order book stood at a level of 5.9 gigawatts. All right, so those were some of the major corporate highlights from the day. But Vinny, tomorrow's Friday, but it's also a trading day and lots of action as always. So tell us what to watch out for.
It's Friday for sure, but we are beginning the new series as well. So that's something interesting to watch out for. But on the global front, let's keep an eye out on the UK's GDP data. Important to watch out for that. And the US will be keeping an eye out on the core PCE price index data over there. So important data points on that global front. Domestic front, some corporate movements that we'll be seeing in action. Ex-dividend companies, we'll be watching out for matrimony.com, TVS Holdings, Samil, as well as Motherson, Sumi Wirings. That's the one we're keeping an eye out on. Important stocks to watch out for. Nifty index reject that we're talking about. So obviously, the inclusion of Geo Financial Services, Zomato, that will continue to be in focus tomorrow, as well as exclusion of BPCL and Britannia. So keep an eye out on these names. And lastly, IndusInd Bank. That's an important one to watch out for. We have seen a lot of action happening here. So bank's external auditor with PwC is likely to table a report before the bank's board, and that's going to be tomorrow. Any key updates that we get in on that front is key to watch out for in tomorrow's trading session. But on that note, we're going to wind down this edition of Market Forward on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for tuning in.